Mute.
Hello, everybody. Welcome, welcome. Okay. So we will go ahead and get started. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us for Healers Who Look Like Me, Black Women Clinicians Shaping Mental Wellness. I'm so glad that you guys are here. Today we're having a real conversation, not like the ones that we usually have where we're like, oh, I'm fine, and we keep on moving, but a real honest one about mental health, what it costs us to stay silent, and what becomes possible when we start talking about it. And so my name is Dr. Tiana Charles. I am the Director of Membership and Communications at the National Association of Social Workers California chapter. And I'll be your moderator today. With us, we have four incredible panelists who bring both personal experience and professional insight to this conversation. And so we'll spend the next hour or so together exploring different topics like shame, trauma, the way that we talk to ourselves. Ultimately, our goal is not to diagnose anyone or have all the answers to all the questions that we have. It's simply just to create space for honest conversation, practical insight, and hope. And so, before we dive into the questions for our panelists, I would love to introduce each of them, or if they introduce themselves. And so, as you introduce yourself, please share your name, your credentials, what kind of work you do, the populations you serve. And I would love to hear just one sentence describing what healing means to you. And we'll start with our NASW California Vice President of our board, Elisa Lewis.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I want to give a special thank you to the NASW California chapter for hosting this event and all of the panelists for their yes. I'm happy to be with you today. My name is Elisa Lewis, and I hold a master's in social work as well. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, licensed in California, Oregon, Washington State, and Nevada. And we have an incredible discussion in store for you today. What healing looks like for me is it looks like a journey. I don't it doesn't look like someone who is like, I am at the end of my healing journey, because then I think you would be dead. Um, so it is a journey, and it looks like, I don't know, like sort of like a roller coaster, up and down. Sometimes you feel like you know what it is that you are doing and your purpose, and sometimes you don't. Um, so yeah, that is what healing looks like to me. And because Kelly Baker is next to me, I am going to pass it off to her so that she can introduce herself.
Up your meal.
But I'm just talking and talking. Let me just. Hi, everybody. My name is Kelly Baker, and I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I am licensed in California, Washington, and Oregon. I'm also the founder and owner of Honest Trauma Healing Center. We are a culturally centered trauma healing. It's funny that the first question is about healing. Practice. We serve Black, Indigenous, people of color, communities, couples, trauma survivors. I have a master's in marriage and family therapist, and some of the modalities or some of the ways that I offer healing is through ketamine assisted therapy, internal family systems, brain spotting. And in addition to all of that, I'm also the executive director of Express Arte Cultural Wellness Collective. And on a kind of fun note, I'm also known as the Black Therapist on Wheels, and so that's some of what my healing looks like. It is traveling. Let me back, actually, not even back up, but healing to me, I think is really individualistic. And I think that it is a journey, and there's so many layers to healing. For me, healing has looked like really reclaiming my voice, saying yes to the things I want to say yes to, saying no to the things I don't want to do, being really clear about that, but also traveling. I have a camper van, and it's me getting out in my van, traveling, working on the road when I want to work, and just really creating a lifestyle that really works for me. And so for me, that's what my healing journey looks like. I think healing is very individualistic. And I'm glad to be here. And so I am going to pass it to Taronda.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. I'm Taronda Jones. I am a licensed clinical therapist. I am also licensed in California, Washington, Oregon, and Texas. I am also a co-founder with Elisa for our Mocha Therapy Group. We have a practice working specifically with people of color, but of course, we do work with all populations. Personally, I work with clients with trauma. I enjoy working with clients with trauma and grief. I also do consulting work at an adult daycare, and I work with people with severe and persistent mental illness like schizophrenia, bipolar, autism, and things like that. Um, for me, healing is trying to show up authentically moving forward. So that's been my healing journey, is just kind of honoring myself and having that self-awareness of what my needs are and kind of putting it out there to everybody else to help me in my process. So it takes other people for me to heal too. It's just not me and my journey alone. So that's healing for me. And I tell people I'm not healed, I'm healing. And it always will be a process. It never stops. I actually look forward to the process because there's always something good that comes out of the healing, right? So healing is a journey, as Elisa mentioned. And yes. All righty. Well, I will pass it on to Dr. Craig.
Hi, everyone. I'm so glad you were able to join us today. I'm Dr. Craig Carey, and my primary place of healing the world 1 hour at a time is actually in Cary, North Carolina.
Mm.
So I'm glad to be joining you here from the other side of the nation. I am a registered nurse. I am also a clinical addiction specialist, a professor, and mental health therapist. And most recently, I've been honored to add consultant to my list of ways I heal the world 1 hour at a time for large organizations who want to do specialized programming for special populations. So I've done some work with the UNC Health System and most recently Delta Airlines as they are trying to expand access to flights for children and persons with autism. So I'm licensed in California, Michigan, and North Carolina for mental health and for nursing. And I teach also online in counseling program at Walden University and serve as an adjunct professor at UNC at Chapel Hill in the nursing department.
I love that. Thank you all so much. I'm going to add to that. I think healing for me looks like community, ensuring that you have people around you who understand you, who wants to see you win. And so I can already tell this is going to be such a powerful conversation. I'm excited. Let's get started. So I want to go back kind of to the beginning because, as you know, like our healing journey starts when we're young. Well, the trauma starts when we're young, but we have to go back to recognize that, learn about like what our strength, emotions, what that is, that starts from youth. And so those messages, they really bring back as to like what we're allowed to do or what brings up struggle for us. And so when we talk about mental health in our community, a lot of us was taught to just be strong, like that's not going to hurt you. Those different messages. So I'm wondering from you all, what does that message actually do to us over time, especially with us being in this space now as healers, right? What does that do to us over time and then coming into this space trying to help others heal themselves from those messages that we were given growing up.
So I'll start with that. One of the dire, terrible consequences that comes from that message of it's not okay to not be okay is that it stays with us. And so later on in life, it impacts our help seeking behaviors in a manner that when we need help, we don't seek it because we need to be strong. That's the message, be strong, be resilient, as if there's only the option, you're strong or not. There's not a lot of attention paid to what support is needed to have strength, to gain strength, especially as you're facing different situations in life. And so it mutes us, it mutes our voice, and it stops us from feeling empowered to reach out to others. And also, an added layer to that is the element of shame, that if I do reach out, then what is that saying to others? And somehow it impacts the view that help seeking is a sign of strength.
I would agree with that, Dr. Correa. I also think that to piggyback on what you just said, we then stuff our feelings, right? We don't seek that help. And then it affects, of course, our mental health, but also our physical health as well. We
Indeed.
have these internal dialogue that we should be strong, right? Especially as Black folks, right? It's like, oh, that's not nothing. Just keep it pushing, right? You don't tell our business. What happens inside the household stays inside the household, right? Therapy is for white folks, right? That's not for us. We've been used to this, like this life, right? So we could get through it. And I think it really misses the opportunity for connection, right? To challenge us, to validate our feelings, to validate our experiences, what we've been through. I know for the men that I work with, they tell me that this is how they grew up, right? Men don't cry, men don't tell people your business, right? And it manifests as anger and rage. And the same for women that I know as well, right? And so that's the way that I've seen it play out.
Yeah, is it okay if I jump in? Yeah, and I also just want to add, and I agree with both of you, is, even if we go back even before how we have learned to manage our traumatic experiences, I think that also our nervous systems have been taught, through years and years of ignoring how our bodies feel, body sensations, our emotions that have been taught to just numb out. And so often, we don't even know we are experiencing chronic stress or we're overwhelmed until we're in the thick of it. And I like to think of it as kind of like a frog in boiling water. A frog will stay in boiling water until it's dead. And it's a slow boil. And the frog becomes accustomed to the hot water that after a while, the water isn't even hot. And I think that often Black women, at least the Black women that I work with, including myself, that because the chronic stress, because trauma, things that we live with every day, that our nervous systems are out of whack. Our nervous system doesn't even alert us consistently when we're in danger, not even just physical danger, but also emotional danger too. And so, just even looking at, just from the point of just, somatically, how are we even paying attention to when we're feeling overwhelmed? So being disconnected from ourselves, which also leads us to disconnection from other people. And so I just wanted just to add that.
Absolutely. Toronto, do you want to jump in? Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Yes, to piggyback off what Kelly said, I think somatically, that is important to understand how our nervous systems are responding to our environments. And that awareness is not there for a lot of people. And I do in therapy a lot, educate my clients, all of them, on their nervous system and their responses. And that's been very helpful for them because now their discernment is getting better to understand what's safe and what's not. It's off prior to that because of our, let's just say, generational trauma that we have going on here too as well. So yeah.
I think that's a great point. And when you talk about the somatic stuff that goes on when it comes to this just the internal stress, it it does become a lot over time. And so I kind of want to shift to talking about what is the difference between like everyday stress, like I can do this, I am strong enough to get through this, to where it's something deeper and we need to actually pay attention to it in your minds.
Gosh, this just came up. I forgot what we were talking about this. Like, what is everyday stress versus something that is affecting your psyche? But just at the top of my head, I'm gonna say, right, we deal with stressors. Some people are like, I have to be on a panel, and I'm kind of nervous about it, right? I keep thinking about it, but I'm excited about it as well. So I think that versus like, wow, I cannot sleep. I keep thinking about this thing and replaying it in my mind. It is causing me to maybe not eat or eat things that I shouldn't eat, or it's not, I can't take care of myself. Um, I think I said I can't sleep. It's interrupting those just daily activities that what we need to do to take care of ourselves, pretty much, right? If we are also noticing that we are irritable or having conflict with people, I think that that is a sign as well. I know with women, irritability is a big sign of depression, and some women didn't even know that because they're like, oh man, I was just on my period. But actually, it is a big sign of depression. Yeah, so just off the top of my head, I just want to point that out.
I want to share too that there seems to be an idea overall that emotions are either all good or all bad. And that is such a mischaracterization of them. So, of course, like with my students, like I'm nervous, like Elisa was saying about an exam. Great, because that's going to motivate you to study, to be prepared. So, that's awesome that you feel motivated to do that. Where it comes into concern is if it paralyzes you or otherwise impairs you in ways that cause you to not be your best self. So that's where we need to pay attention to them. You know, sadness will come. Is this normal and expected sadness because of a sad situation, or is it stopping you from taking care of yourself, stopping you from getting out of bed, washing up, brushing your teeth, those type of things? And so when we think about emotions versus what's toxic, what's good, what's not so good, it that goes back to the statement that was made earlier about things being individualistic, and specific to the person. And I would caution anyone when thinking about emotions for them to be an all good or an all negative. And a lot of times there's more attention is paid to the negative. Like you don't want to be too negative, but you also don't want to be on the too positive side either, because there are some decisions that could be made detrimental when you're in a very good space as well. And that too is individualized. So paying attention to the specifics of the person and also making sure that you aren't just thinking about sadness as, oh, no sadness is good, or happiness as no happiness is good. It's definitely individualized, and just you as a whole person deserves attention every day, especially from your own self.
I agree. What is shared, and also that like what Dr. Carey was saying is number one, we all feel a range of emotions. Everybody. We all feel angry, we all feel sad, we all feel all of those emotions. I think that when I think about, regular stress, like we all feel stress. We all feel stress every day. It's a part of our common things that we experience every day. I think that when it becomes, when it affects our ability to regulate our emotions, for an extended period of time, like I am just constantly feeling like I'm on ease or overwhelmed, or I have a lot of tension in my body and I'm not able to self-soothe, meaning I'm not able to calm myself down, or if I feel chronically irritable or anxious or depressed, that often that can be triggered by chronic stress and your nervous system um, saying, hey, something isn't right, that I am out of balance. And so looking at, do I feel calm? Do I feel connected? Not just connected to people, but also connected to myself. And when I have a really hard time, with being able to stay present, being able to take care of myself, that means that something's out of whack. And so I just wanted to add that piece.
Yes, and I think all of you guys are definitely talking about how people are coping with their stress if they do have stress. So stress is not, specific to a thing, it's how that person is experiencing that thing, right? And so coping is important and understanding, is the stress causing dysfunction, dysregulation, all those things that you guys just mentioned. That's the cue to know that maybe this is beyond just normal stress, something else is happening here. So, yeah, I am on board with what all you guys just said.
And I like the idea of recognizing that there's not good or bad emotions, right? Like it's not black or white. It can range. But a lot of people in the Black community, they didn't grow up talking about their feelings and their emotions and what that looks like, how to manage them, how to regulate yourself. And so they're coming back as adults trying to reparent themselves. And so, what do you guys feel like? Where do you feel like you start with that when you're reparenting yourself as an adult, trying to regulate those emotions and not allow them to come out as anger or as frustration? Where do you start?
I think the primary place to start is you giving yourself permission and the okay to feel that way without judgment, without consequence. You are okay to feel this way. So then that gives you the safety that's needed and the mind space required in order to decide where to begin, what to do next. And also gives you the mind space to think about what is it that you need? What is it that you want? What is it that you expect? When you were speaking and asking the question, immediately I thought about indoctrination as a child in the spiritual spaces, in the faith-based spaces. If you're having problems, if you are too sad, then something's impaired in your relationship with God. There's definitely something, quote unquote, wrong with you, the person, because of these feelings, or these things are being brought up because somehow you're out of alignment with what's expected. And that can go on throughout people's lives. I work with clients all the time who have this religious trauma from their youth, and they are very muted in expressing exactly what's going on: fear of reprisal, fear of judgment, consequences, etc. And so, as a provider, my first job is to make sure that that client feels safe, and that starts with me making sure that I'm doing that in my own daily practices, in my own life, so that I can shoulder what's going on with clients and have my own mind space and my own good sound health in order to be helpful to them.
Yeah, I agree with what Dr. Carey was saying. I think that, number one, it's okay to feel angry. It's okay, to feel irritated, and giving ourselves permission, to feel those emotions that may be negative, or as a child, you weren't really allowed to show those feelings. And so when a lot of women that I work with have a really hard time with even acknowledging that they're angry. That, anger in a lot of ways has kind of been given this bad rap, that there's something wrong with you, that if you feel angry, and again, it's a normal emotion. Anger can help us to come up with that no. or to do something different. It can be a great motivator. It's what we do with it. And so normalizing, it's okay to feel any of our feelings. They're normal, they're natural. And I think part of normalizing it is also talking about it, naming feelings. When we have little kids, how kids learn about emotions is the adults name those emotions. That's how kids learn to identify emotions. With myself and the clients that I work with, like I do a lot of somatic work. And so I do a lot of slowing the session down and saying, what do you notice in your body? What body sensations do you notice? What feelings and emotions? We talk about that because often, we learn to just numb out, to disassociate from our physical body, that any negative emotion we don't want to feel. And so sometimes it is a matter of just slowing down. It is, educating, our clients, but also ourselves, our family, around emotions and normalizing. It's okay to talk about those emotions. It's okay if you got angry and you showed that you were angry. It's as long as you don't hurt anybody. That it's okay to do that. And then also, I think just what I see in my practice is I call it happy speak. That we've been conditioned to just do this happy speak, that I'm happy, everything is great. But then what my clients are telling me is like, yeah, that doesn't sound like that's an experience that I would feel happy about. And so there's this disconnect between, what they feel in their bodies and what comes out of their mouth. And so normalizing, also talking about that's a disconnect. It's okay that you're not happy. It's okay that you're sad. And you don't have to act as if, that you are happy, that all emotions, all feelings are welcome.
Yes, I agree with you, Kelly. I think that honoring all of your emotions are important. And what I find with some clients, they don't even know how they feel. They can't even identify the emotion. So we kind of start there, just trying to get them to understand what they're actually feeling. And like you said, somatically, what is happening in your body? What is it connected to what's really happening in your mind? Because there's a disconnect happening a lot of times about their reality versus what they're feeling, right? And so just doing a lot of psychoeducation. I have an emotions pillow that I have with my clients that constantly using, like, what are you feeling? I don't know. They will tell me, I don't know, but we have all these emotions. We're feeling something all the time. I tell them, even when you're asleep, some people don't rest when they're asleep, but we have emotions, 24/7. And so when they're able to start to identify, well, no, I wasn't angry. I was actually scared um, about this thing, but it looked like anger and I didn't know how to express that, then that can change things for them too as well. So a lot of just educating them. Yes, all emotions are valid, good and bad ones, and just honoring all of them. Whether you like, I know a lot of people like to stay on the good side of things, but those bad emotions are trying to tell you something too. So definitely acknowledging those are very important.
Absolutely. And I'm going to invite our viewers into the chat to kind of engage with us with the toxic shame that we're going to talk about and the trauma, because I think when it comes to our community, this is something that we carry often and we don't talk about it a lot. For us, it's like, oh, I feel guilty because I should do X, Y, and Z. Especially, I'm bringing it up. We're on the heels of Juneteenth in a couple of days, right? And a lot of that trauma that came from Juneteenth has manifested into the shame that we feel today, and how we show up today. And so a lot of that stuff that comes up is like the mistakes that we made and how hard we are on ourselves with that, like different family stuff that comes up, things that we're told, whether it's in the professional space or if it's personal, that makes us feel less than. And so it becomes something a lot deeper than just being guilty for making a mistake or being guilty for not showing up for somebody in the way that we feel like we should. It's actually, shame of being who we are, in like that deep, I'm gonna say, dislike of ourselves, right? As Black individuals. And so I'm curious of two things. I'm curious as to one, how do we know when the shame of who we are as Black people, Black clinicians, is hurting us? But two, how does that show up in the relationships that we have, whether it's the partners, our kids, at work? How does that show? How does that shame show up?
That is a very good question. I think all of this is really connected. Um, but the shame of Black people, when I'm working with clients, I like to first ask them, like, whose voice do you hear? Like, if they're experiencing some shame, like, whose voice is that? They 9 times out of 10, they think it's their voice, right? But when we do some work around that, some deep work, it's like it's not even their voice that they're here. They're carrying something that somebody told them, maybe a parent, maybe a teacher, maybe somebody in the workplace, right? And I think it is important for them to recognize that because it will come up again. And then they're able then to ask themselves, whose voice is this? Is this my voice? And is this a belief that I believe about myself? Right? Um, and the way that I think it manifests again in relationships, right? Any type of connection, it keeps us from connecting with people, right? If there is an innate belief, a negative belief that we have and have internalized, right? Well, gosh, if I believe this about myself, surely um, these folks might see it too. Taronda might see it if I try to connect with her. I don't want her to see this thing about me that I feel like is ugly, that, oh, I've been trying so hard to keep inside, because then she might see it and not like me anymore, right? So it's that belief, right? And that is where you mentioned, Dr. Charles, the reparenting comes in, right? Because there's something that we can do to shift that voice that we hear, right? So I often tell my clients, like, who is somebody that you look up to, that even if you don't know them, right? You might have seen them on the internet, or maybe it is somebody that you know. And how would they talk to you? How do you think they might respond to this? Like, change the voice, change the channel, and start speaking to yourself in that way. But also knowing that, like Kelly and everybody else on this panel said, that when anger comes up, that is a part of us that we also need to give attention to. We don't want to just put that in the corner, because anger will continue to knock on that door until you invite it in and you give it the proper attention and time. Right? Because most of my clients that I work with, yeah, they show up maybe 90% of that anger. What's under that is hurt, is pain, and it's manifesting as anger, right? So yeah, that's what I have to say to that.
I'll go next. I agree, Elisa, with everything that you said. I think that shame, toxic shame, I think is so layered, that there's so many other emotions under that. And matter of fact, this came up in a session I had this morning with a client, and it also came up last week in a different session. And I think this often the narrative, at least when you said whose voice is that, often clients don't realize that it is someone else's voice that they have adopted and it's become their own voice. That reminds them that they're not enough, they're not good enough, that something's wrong with them. And so in one of my sessions, my client referred to herself as this really negative name. And so I use a method called brain spotting. So we really slowed the session down. I had her spend some time with that experience, that narrative. And in the session, she said, my mom used to call me that. And she said, I didn't even realize that her narrative became my own narrative of how I saw myself. And that I saw myself as something negative. And so she didn't even realize that. And so I think that sometimes that's part of the work, is slowing it down, being able to ask whose narrative is this and where did it come from? Because, we're not born feeling this way about ourselves. And I think another thing that comes to mind for me is when I think about the strong Black woman. To me, that whole idea, that whole narrative, for me, creates a lot of shame that I don't measure up. And if I'm feeling some type of way, including feeling overwhelmed, that there's something wrong with me because other Black women, especially other Black women in my family or other clients' families have been able to measure up and do a million things and still keep it together. And so that comes up, in my sessions. And I think also, so not only does it lead to a disconnect from us from our own bodies, our own pain, our own feelings, it also comes up as a disconnect that we can't share really vulnerable parts of ourselves that may be seen as negative or displeasing parts of ourselves in relationships. We only get to share the strong part, the capable part, the smart part. We don't get to share those more vulnerable pieces that says, I'm hurt or I'm angry, or if you knew this about me, that you might have some other thoughts about me, including you might reject me or you might abandon me. You may no longer, be in a relationship with me. And so again, I think it's just so layered. There's all kinds of things that are going on, but it also again it impacts a person's relationship with themselves.
Yes, Kelly, I agree. All of those things, abandonment, rejection, but also isolation and avoidance and relationships. It does not allow you to get close to anyone or anyone to get close to you when you're living with all of that shame. And so I do couples therapy and it shows up in just about every relationship that somebody is experiencing some shame that doesn't allow for that deeper connection. So for sure all of our relationships are affected by shame, and it definitely becomes toxic at that point when we can't be authentic and let people know that we've been hurt or this has hurt us in this way. And can we get support? Because when you're feeling shame, once you get it out, a lot of people are like, I'm so happy I was able to talk about that. Now we start the healing process, right? When the shame has been exposed. And so I think it's important to normalize it. It's not shame, it's your experience, and let's talk about your experience, right? And then we can kind of get the healing from there. So, yes, it is layered. It's a lot of different nuances to it all, but it can be healed, or you can heal or start healing from shame, right? So,
So, Rhonda, I'm glad you brought up the idea of sharing your story because that's really what you're speaking to is people sharing their story and sharing their experience. And you don't have to be, a licensed clinician with a lot of letters behind your name to be helpful to others. Simply sharing your story can be so helpful. And once we dismantle this idea that we have to be a particular way or show up just right and just so, stories of our own experiences can be very helpful to others in building community and empowering them to mobilize their tribe, the people who are going to support them. But being shrouded in shame, going to a place of isolation prevents all of that. So I'm really hopeful that if nothing else from this conversation, that everyone here understands that you can be the example no matter what, licenses, credentials, degrees aside, just from people right next to you. And I can think of so many times, especially in my role as a professor, I hear students all the time, they never have a Black professor. They never have a Black professor. And they always wonder, well, how did you get, the PhD? And so my colleagues will tell them, my majority cultural colleagues will tell them how their parents had money put to the side and they had no worries when they were in college. And that is strikingly different than my reality. And when I share that with students, they resonate with it and they too then feel empowered like, yes, this is something I can attain and something that I can do. And so having those experiences as well, when you do share and it is received well, does motivate, support, and encourage more of it. And so when people are talking, I would just say, listen to what they're saying and be with them. It's not always the role to fix it or to do something about it. Just listening can be so helpful. It's the simple things.
Absolutely. And like you guys mentioned, so shame oftentimes comes along with trauma. And so one thing that we noticed, trauma has kind of become a buzzword, you know. People are, when they think about the word, it's like everything has to be heavy, everything is clinical. But what it really describes is kind of just like what we've lived and what has come up for us, right? Some of the struggles and things like that. And so it's not always the extreme situations. Um, but I'm curious to for you all, what does trauma really mean in like everyday life, right? So what if it's not a, because we've seen people, well, I've seen people in my clinical practice who you would think has the perfect life, but they have significant issues mentally. And so you're like, well, what is your story? Why would you say that you've experienced trauma? And so what does trauma look like in everyday life? Um, and how have you seen that show up in Black clinicians?
With my clients, I provide a lot of psychoeducation around what is trauma, and I think that people do think it has to be, some big experience when really it's not the experience that makes it traumatic, it's how you individually experience that event that makes it traumatic. And especially if after that event happens and there's been a period of time, you're still having some symptoms or some reactions, including not being able to sleep or feeling anxious or having reoccurring thoughts about that experience. Also, trauma for kids is very different than for adults. And so when you think about trauma, often leaves you feeling powerless. And so when kids grow up in homes where there's a lot of chaos, a lot of arguing, just not really feeling safe, that can be really traumatic for kids. And because we don't enter this world as adults, we enter this world with some of those same traumatic experiences. And it can be something as simple as growing up with a lot of chaos. And that, trauma is also somatic. It's not just psychological, it's not just our thoughts. It's how it's somatic, it's in our bodies, that our bodies are triggered even if we don't know what's being triggered, even if we had an experience as a kid or even as a baby that was really traumatic, that we don't have any working knowledge of it, that our bodies can be reminded and triggered in different ways. And so I like with my clients explain it kind of as having a backpack. Having this backpack and each traumatic experience is a brick. And every time you have an experience, there's a brick that's put in your backpack that after a period of time, you forget what's in the backpack. Also, you forget the backpack is even there. And so every time something happens, it can be traumatic for you, but not traumatic for somebody else. And so it's how you and your nervous system experience that. And it doesn't have to be traumatic for everybody. It can be traumatic for me, but not traumatic for you. And same thing, like, growing up, an experience with my parents may have been traumatic for me, but not my brother. And so it's how I experience that experience and my ability to feel safe in my own body, my ability to feel disempowered, are all traumatic experiences. That's how I explain it to my clients.
Yes, Kelly, I do a lot of psychoeducation too on trauma, um, and explaining to them too that, trauma it belongs to you. It doesn't belong to anybody else. So that sometimes they feel like, well, people said I don't have trauma. And it's like, well, tell me what you believe trauma is. And so it's not what these other people believe trauma. So I kind of explain it as, trauma could be anything that's adverse to what you think is normal. So it could be something really small to you to other people, but it could be not normal for you personally, and so that could be a traumatic experience for you. So um and yes, everybody experiences it differently, so doing that psychoeducation too on your nervous system responses. Do you freeze? Do you shut down? Do you run? What are you doing when you are having I kind of do this little exercise where I tell clients, okay, if you had a bear in the woods and you saw the bear, what would you do? That tells me so much about their nervous system. Some people are like, I would run. Some people would say, I would try to fight the bear. Believe it or not, people have said they will fight a bear. Some people say that they will, just freeze and not know what to do. And that is how their nervous systems are responding. So that gives them the idea of what's happening for them when they are in situations that cause them to react or have this traumatic experience. And so I think it's important for people to understand what's happening, to your point, Kelly, somatically inside. And that trauma is your trauma and not anybody else's. So not to dismiss it or make you feel like just because something bad per se didn't happen to you doesn't mean you don't have trauma. And then on the flip side, I have people who tell me they don't have trauma and then they got shot or they were in a car accident where everybody died but them. One time I had that. Everybody died in the car accident but them. And he said he had no trauma. And I said, okay, let's talk about that. And so I think some people don't even understand what trauma is. They don't even know what it means, right? And so I think, again, the psychoeducation part is super important for people to understand, what their experience was and was it traumatic or not for them.
Absolutely. And what are some of the signs that someone is reacting from past hurt, or even if like you're saying, this guy went through a whole situation, people died, and he feels like there was no trauma. How do you know when they're reacting to it, even though they don't realize it?
How they show up in relationships and how they feel about people. And a lot of times it's trust. I think trust manifests a lot with people who have trauma. I was told that that's the first thing that goes when people have trauma is their trust in situations, people, things, right? And so I think it manifests in that. And you can kind of see it in how they are protecting something. They're a lot of times in protection, right, mode. So I think it manifests in different ways, but those are for that particular client for sure. That's what I saw, and I was able to point that out to him, and he's like, "Oh, okay, maybe I do have some trauma."
I'd like to add too, Rhonda, you are absolutely correct. I think it shows up as well, like connection, but also how people are taking care of themselves too, right? Like, going back, are you getting enough sleep? Are you eating right? Are you taking your medication? Um, yeah, just overall, are you showing up to work, right? So I think it manifests in that way as well. I think like we talk a lot about somatic, but in layman terms, like, I love this video. Taronda knows that we share this video with people on trauma. And it's like when you get a phone call from a manager, like, do you automatically like, oh no, God, oh my God, I got this meeting on my calendar. What is it that they want? Oh my God, I'm gonna get laid off from work. I'm not doing something right. Like their heart starts pounding, maybe they start sweating, maybe their thoughts are just, they can't stop them. They're on this like rat wheel or mouse wheel. And so is that something that you do, or do you say, oh, my manager wants to talk to me? Okay, my calendar is clear. I'm excited. Like I can't wait to see what we're going to talk about, right? So when things happen, like you got a phone call, it's like, oh man, my dad is calling. Is this something? What is this? What is he going to want? What is he going to say? Did something bad happen? Right? Um, so I think just taking a pause and seeing how you respond, how your body responds to certain things, um, will let you know if this is like a trauma reaction, or like if this is something real, present. Well, we know that it's real, but if it's something from the past, if you're responding in a way that is from a past event, that'll let you know. Mhm.
For sure. So that time went by fast. We're coming to end with our time together, but I want to leave the space for you guys to say something that might have might stick with somebody today. So I have two parts of this because there was a question that I really think we should have answered that we didn't have time to. So I'm gonna give you time now. Um, but what is a real way that people can start challenging their inner voice? Because we talked a lot about shame and trauma and how that shows up for us, and a lot of that is self-talk, negative self-talk. And so what is something that they can do to challenge their inner voice? But also, what is one thing that you wish people in the Black community understood about mental health?
That's real.
So one of the ways that I would say that people can challenge their inner voice is first do an assessment of it. And the assessment is really quick. Is this serving me? Is it helping me? Is it edifying? Or is it tearing me down? And once you know whether or not it's tearing you down or edifying you, then you'll know what to challenge. And people then automatically think, well, if it's a negative, then I got to do the opposite. And I encourage my clients to not, and myself, not to do the opposite. What will be edifying? What is going to serve me? What do I need right now? And let that guide the speech that I give myself. Let that be the voice. And once you start to do that in practice, then it becomes your habit. Now it's your new thing. And as far as what I wish that Black people knew, as far as about counseling, about mental health, is that it is a thing that can be helpful to you. That's why it exists. That's why it was created. And it also, I wish that they understood that even though their insurance may have a particular provider, or they may be assigned a particular provider, or they just happen to have one because they had the 3 o'clock available on the particular day that the client also had the same opening, the match is essential. This is a relationship. This is someone who you have to be able, and I tell my clients, if you cannot take off your shoes after a long day of walking with smelly socks and feet, put them on the couch and feel like you just ready to talk to me judgment free, then we got some work to do on the relationship. That rapport is not there. And so I wish that Black people especially would not have one experience with counseling or with mental health and then blanket it over all experiences that they may have with mental health. The match is important, making sure that they feel comfortable with that person, and talking to them is essential before any work can be done. And so those are the things that I would say I wish that they knew. They have choices, they have options, and to definitely exercise them.
Yes, I agree, Dr. Carey. The therapeutic alliance is the key to change. And so it's important for Black people to get that message and understand, yes, if they can, choose that relationship, they don't have to be forced into it, or, sit with somebody that they don't feel comfortable with, because there's no gains with that. To address the inner voice that we have, I think I tell my clients, like, would you talk to your friend like that? What, you are beating yourself up. You're your own bully in your head. And so that voice, who's your mom or your dad or whoever, was bullying you. And so now it's time for you to, deal with that from the inner child place. And so I think that work gets done there, where we replace those voices with affirmations, and affirmations for them to feel empowered and see themselves differently. So challenging that inner voice is hard. I know it is, but it can be replaced with something more positive. So they just have to start to treat themselves with more self-compassion and start to be kinder to themselves. And that usually is helpful when they look at it from that perspective, because they would never say some of the things to them, or we wouldn't say some of the things to other people that we say to ourselves, right? So yeah.
I like that, Taronda. I use that as well. And I also say, would you talk to your younger self in that way? And typically they're like, no. But I also use, not but, and I also use, I love the putting your thoughts on trial, right? Because you got to have evidence. You're in front, like you can't say, well, this is what I think. No, a judge that is going to be thrown out, right? And so I just love that little activity that I do. And I want to leave people with like connect. If I have one thing to say to Black folks, get help, right? And continue to get the help. If one person is not helpful, go to the next. This is your life, right? You need to live it as full as you want to live it. And you need to be able to challenge yourself. You need to be able to sit in front of someone also that will challenge you. To live your best life. Yeah, and if it's not a good fit, there's so many other therapists in the world. You can find a good fit, right? But like Dr. Correa said, don't let that one experience ruin your ability to be on your own healing journey. Mhm.
And I agree with what everyone has said. And so what I would offer with that, inner critic or that inner voice is when possible to meet it with curiosity. That, when I think about kids who often don't have language to express how they're feeling, our job is to figure out the meaning of that behavior. And so with that inner voice, meeting it with some curiosity, what is this voice trying to tell me? Sometimes that can also create some grace. Often that voice is your younger self, and often it's protective, trying to protect you from feeling disappointment or getting your hopes up too high, or a lot of different things. And so being able to say, where does this come from? What is this voice trying to tell me? What is this voice maybe is afraid of? And normalizing listening, hearing it out, that voice is trying to tell you something. That doesn't mean you have to follow what it's saying, but can you give it a little bit of space? And again, often it's fear and being able to say, yeah, I hear that. So that's what I would offer. And then in terms of Black people, what I would say is mental health is connected to our physical health. And there's been so much research that shows that chronic pain can often be due to mental health or trauma. Again, trauma is somatic in our bodies. It can also cause diabetes, high blood pressure. And so it isn't just enough to make sure you're taking care of your mental health. We also need to be taking care of our physical health. And if you can't find a doctor, who you like, that we need to, again, just like we're looking for therapists, same thing with primary care doctor. And I think so often, we have an experience with a doctor that we don't like and then we don't go back. And it is our birthright to have good, adequate physical primary health care and mental health care.
Absolutely. So I am going to end it by saying one of my favorite sayings that I like to say is self-preservation is not selfish.
Yep.
And so, in order for us as clinicians, Black clinicians specifically, to help others, we have to preserve ourselves. And so, what that means is if you need to take a day off, take that PTO, you have it. And I know half of y'all got a whole year saved up that y'all ain't using. Me included. So take that break that you need to preserve yourself, to take care of your mental health. And I know there's some questions. I don't know if our panel is rushing off to another session, but I'm going to end it. And if they can stay to answer questions, then they will. But thank you so much to our panelists, Elisa, our VP of our board, Kelly Baker, Tarana Jones, Dr. Corey Carey, and I am Dr. Charles. And I thank everybody who took the time to come today, whether this conversation gave you a name for something that you've been struggling with, or just reminded you that we're all in this space together. I hope you leave here a little lighter, knowing that we are having these conversations and that we're going to continue having these conversations. Be well, take care of yourselves, and don't wait until you're on the edge to reach out. We're here for you. All right. So there was a question about mentorship. Do any of you all provide mentorship to the community?
Let's see, mentorship, like supervision, or just because I mean, mocha therapy, we've had students We have, we can take associates. But, I mentor quite a few students, not even through mocha therapy, just folks who are in school that come to me with questions. Absolutely. I think we could all do that, actually.
Mhm.
Taikisha, I hope I said your name right. Can you come off mute and share what your context was?
Yes, thank you all for doing this panel. So it's very, very informative. So for my question, just wanted to know if anybody does mentorship. So not in the form of like the LCSW supervision, not anything in terms of a doctorate for supervision, but just kind of taking alongside like a young social worker through, kind of up and coming, trying to figure out what this field looks like.
Thank you so much. So I personally do, not in the space of NASW California, but in my personal practice, I do have mentors. And so you can reach out. But
Awesome.
we also do have a mentorship program coming down the pipelines for NASW California. I don't know if you're in California or not. If you're not, I would definitely check in with your local NASW um, chapter to see if they have a mentorship program as well.
I would say with mentorship, having a good match is super important with that as well. Not only so that you feel supported, but to keep ushering you in a good direction. And so I have put my email and phone number in the chat. I encourage anybody, please reach out. I would not be where I'm today if it was not for someone slowing down, listening to me, steering me in a good direction. And so I'm all about paying that forward to others so that then they can pay it forward to the next and to the next and to the next, and always doing a reach back for people to excel and do the things that they are motivated to do.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you.
Any other questions for our panel? Hearing none, again, we thank you all so much for being here, and we will see y'all at the next panel. Bring a friend next time. Hopefully, you'll see you within the next month or so. Bye, y'all.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks, everyone.